Welcome to this tutorial about variable replication. So we're going to be continuing our replication journey on multiplayer by looking at how variables are replicated in Unreal Engine, and this will work for Unreal Engine 4 and 5 similarly. So let's just jump in and start getting acquainted to this. So here we are inside of Unreal Engine 4.26 if you want to follow along today, and this is a third-person character template. And I have included starter content just because that will allow us to have a few assets which will help demonstrating what is going on. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about how a variable is getting replicated, some of the important aspects, and doing some demonstrations to make you understand how things work and why they work, so that you can get a better appreciation for if you run into an issue, what it could possibly be. To do this, let's start off with making some blueprints and things so that we actually can make use of it and have good examples available. So first off, we want to create a folder. We'll call it blueprints. Inside the blueprints, we are going to create a blueprint class of the type actor. I'm going to call it BP door because we're going to be making a door. We open this up and we dock it, and we're going to add a component of static mesh type. And we're going to call this door frame. For static mesh for that, we can search for door and we should get some results here. You can see there is a door frame available here, and that's what that door frame looks like. While the door frame is selected, we add another static mesh and we call this one door. And the reason I'm doing all of this is because I'm showing you all the steps so you can follow along, and you have the whole solution. There's nothing like already implemented by me in the beginning. So we're starting off fresh and everybody can follow along. Anyway, so we have a door now. So this is the SM door. It will be slightly offset here. We can just drag it a little bit and it should... we have a snapping that is set for 10. We put it to 5 and it should position itself better, like so. And since it has its pivot point over here with the gizmo, that means that if we were to rotate this door, then it would be opening and closing like it was actually attached with hinges here. So that's the first part. We have done the actual visual representation of this. Now let's create some kind of event for this. So we want to have an event that's supposed to represent interacting with the door. Now I would recommend using something like a blueprint interface or something like that, but just to save a little bit of time, we're just going to be making a little bit of a custom event, and we'll call this open door, let's say, like so. So this is our event that's going to be called on the door when we want something to happen. In addition to that, we want to actually be able to have this door be interacted with. So we need to first, we can place the door somewhere in the world, and then we can open up our third-person character. We go to our event graph and we can find some space somewhere. I'm gonna use the key for E and let that event be something that we can make use of. Whoops, that's the wrong one. Keyboard E. And then we'll also be picking up keyboard F. And this is for debug reasons, so that we can have some control over what does the world look like in this specific moment, basically. But it'll make sense as we go along. So the first thing we want to do, and this is also something I don't recommend doing, but we're just doing this for educational purposes, but we're gonna get actor by class. And we are going to be having only one door, so we can get the one that actually gets just one door or one result. We're gonna choose the BP door as the actual class to look for. And we're gonna be needing this one a little bit later, so we can do this as well. Now, what we want to have happen here is we want to start communicating with the door. So if we were to just go and call on the open door here. We'll go through all the different steps here. So open door on this doesn't actually do anything right now, so we go back to the door and we say that our door reference here, and we should add a timeline like so, and we call this open door. That was a taken name. Let's call this rotate door, and we'll do play from start like so. And we'll open this timeline up and we'll use a float value. We call the output of the float value rotation %. And we'll add 2 keys by right-clicking and clicking add key to curve. We'll pick the first one by left-clicking. We will choose time 0 and value 0 for that one. And we'll take the second one and we'll do time 1, value 1. That means that this door will open in 1 second. We press these buttons to make sure that we see the whole curve. We change the length from 5 to 1 because our graph is only lasting for 1 second. And this is basically all we need to do right here. We go back out to our door and we say that our no, that's fine. Anyway, so now what we want to do is, this is our % rotation. So we're gonna be multiplying this with a value. And I'm gonna be having to change the keyboard. Like so. So we multiply and we can take a int by float, that's fine. And let's say we want to open it by 90 degrees. So this is what will happen then. We multiply 90 by the % here, which will go up to 1, which means that when it's fully open, it's 90 degrees open. Then we set the rotation, the local rotation. Local. No, that's not what I want. Rotation. Set relative rotation then. Like so. And then we update it when something happens. Now we want to break the rotation here by splitting the struct and just putting our value into the Z, because we want to rotate around the Z axis, the one that goes up and down, to make sure that it's actually rotating. So this should be it. So if we start playing now here, we can go here, I can press my E key and you can see that the door opens. So that's all gonna fine, but this is just single player so far. Nothing multiplayer-esque is happening yet. And we can see this if we change the number of players to 2. And we can actually use play as a listen server, which means we will have one client that will be the server and one client that will be the client, another client. And we choose also new editor pie windows. So we get a separation like this. And you can see that if I go and... I'm sorry, you might be hearing my cat here in the background. Anyway, so if we press E now on the server, we can see that the door opens. And if we go over here to this window, we can see that this door is completely closed for this client here. So it's not working in multiplayer for now. So now we mentioned this a little bit in the previous tutorial when we talked about replication, where we can actually go into the third-person character here, for example, and we can create some custom events. And we can call the first one server, open door, and then we create a second one. And we call that multi, open door. And I managed to misspell it a little bit, like so. And we make the first server event to be replicated and run on server, and we let the open door one be multicast, like so. And then we move these things from the E event to instead be on the multicast. And then we on the server call the multi open door. And from the E key we say we want to call the server open door. And what's gonna happen now is that when we press the E key, regardless if we're the client or the server, we will send a message to the server to take over the connection or the processing. And the server in this case will then make sure to call all the different clients which will then get this event, which will say that they want to find the BP door class that exists in their game instance, and they will call the open door, which will cause this door to open. So if we were to go and, for example, go to the client, I press the E key, you can see the door has opened on both clients here now, both the server and the client. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to go to BP door here, and we're going to change some settings. So when it comes to replication of variables, there's something that's important when it comes to relevancy. And that means that information about replication only goes to those that are deemed relevant for the information. And this can be a lot of different things. If we check, for example, here under replication, we can see that we have, let's see here, we have, actually this is not a good example. Let's start with doing this. We add a variable, we call it angle, because we will be using this later on anyway, and we change this to a float, like so. And here you can see that we have replication, and we have a few options here. We have non-replicated and RepNotify, but we also have, if we choose replicated here, we have a drop-down that says a replication condition. This is basically a filter making sure that you have some control over who is supposed to get this information. And in addition to that, you also have some other things that you can set for this. But for the most part, unless you have a lot of traffic and you're being very, very frivolous about your replication, then you might want to like delve deeper into this. But as long as you're fairly controlled, it should be fine. But let's back up a few steps here. When we want this to happen without calling the event on each separate client, but instead just on the server and have it replicate, then what we do is, let's see, we need to call the server open door, and the server open door is not calling the multi, it's instead calling the get actor for BP door and calling its open door, which means that the server takes over this connection, runs this, and this part here about opening the door is going to be run on the server and the server only. So if we were to do the same thing again here now, and we take the client and we press the E key, you can see that the door is open for the server but not for the client in this case. So this is where we start to run into issues, because now we're like, okay, why isn't it replicating? Well, we need to set some things up. The first thing we need to do is we need to find the blueprint itself, and it actually needs to have replicate available on the blueprint itself. So that's the first thing. So now we have replication on the door. The second part is that we want to replicate the actual opening of the door, but we can wait with that for a little bit. Before we continue, we want to go to our third-person character again, and we want to set up some debug information here. We created this angle over here, this angle variable over here. What we will be doing is we're going to be getting the angle on the F key, and then we will be printing this like so. So that means that we will be printing the value of this angle whenever we press the F key. In addition to that, we go back to our door and we want to start making this replicated as well now. So we change the drop down on the angle to be replicated. In addition to this, we also want to go to our BP door, and we want to see under the replication here, you can see that we have something called the net cull distance squared. This is one of the ways that relevancy can be decided, because if something is too far away, for example, then it will not be deemed as important to know what has happened with this value. So we're going to be changing this to something rather small, because we want to see the effects of being out of range. So this is going to be a squared value. So if we were to say we wanted to have something that's 10 meter in range, we would put in 1,000, because 1,000 units is 10 meters. And then since we square it, we need to add 3 more zeros, so 1,000,000. This should mean that the distance for the relevancy should be 10 meters. So now to make use of our angle here, what we want to do is after the timeline has multiplied the value of the percent rotation with 90, we actually want to set the value of our angle that's being replicated to this result, and then we want to shoot that value into our rotation over here, like so. And to make sure that something is happening, we want to put a print string also here. And we want to print out whatever value is being set for this relative rotation over here. So let's start off with doing that. So we play again. We go to the client. We stand a bit away and we press E. You can see that the server has been increasing the rotation for the door and it came to 90. And for what we can see, the door is still closed for the client, but we can see that it's open for the server. So now if I press F key, you can see that the client is printing out 0, 0. So we think that the rotation for this door should be 0. But if we were to move closer, and now we were in 10 meters of the door, and now we press F again, you can see that we get 90 as the result. We have now gotten within the distance of the door where it considers us as on a need-to-know basis, and it sends us the new replicated value for the angle, which is 90. One of the problems we have here is that the door is not being shown. And this is something we will be delving deeper into. So if we go back to our door actually, over here, and we were to do something like, let's say we create another custom event. Let's call it multi open door. And we'll make this one multicast, like so. And then instead of, we'll actually do this, we will take the relative rotation and the door and we'll copy them over here. So we'll call them here, we'll get the angle here, and put it into the Z here, and then we'll just disconnect this connection here. So that means that we're getting the open door, we're doing the timeline, it's updating the angle as it goes along, and then we'll call our multi open door over here. So this means that the server connection is now going to be sending out this information to all the clients, which will be this information. So if we run now and I press E, you can see it still opens for the server, but for the client it has not opened. But if we continue running towards the door here, you can see that we press F and it's still going to be 90. It's just like it didn't happen. We were out of range. This is the problem with an RPC. Actually, let's demonstrate it again by doing this. We go over here and let's press E, and then we'll run in here, and you see that it didn't start opening, but then we got in the range before it had finished, which meant that we got the information and we actually started to see the this multicast happen, because it wasn't done here. It kept updating. And then when we got in range, we got to run this event here and setting the angle to the rotation. And this is the issue with RPCs, or remote procedure calls, that if you're not in range, or if you're not relevant for any reason when it is happening, then you might miss out on the actual state of things, and you might have a desync issue. Like the door, if we go back here again and run, and I press E, let the door fully open, and then I get in range, I press F, I have the angle is set, but the door looks like it's closed. That's a desync problem, right? And the issue because of that is the RPCs that happened when we were not relevant. So there are ways to work around this, and we will be doing that. And the best way to handle such a situation is to actually go to the angle, which is our variable that we're replicating, and we change this from replicated to RepNotify. What happens then is that this variable gets a function created for it automatically, which you can see over here has popped up that says onRepAngle. So if we double click in there, this is the function that will happen whenever a value, when you're deemed eligible for information about a value. So to demonstrate this, we will do a print in here, and we will type in notify in this, like so. And we'll go back to playing. And if I were to type E now, you can see that it says notify a whole bunch. That's because it's always relevant for the server, because the server sees everything and keeps track of everything. So as the angle for the door opening changed, the server was notified each time it changed, and we got the printing of notify. But for the client, we couldn't see any message coming up that says client notify. But this is something that happens when we get closer. When we get within the 10-meter range, we get the RepNotify saying that, oh, your value is out of sync. You had a 0 value for the angle before you entered the range, but now it's 90, like we see when we press F. So then it updates it for us. So how can this be useful for us? Well, one of the ways we can do this is by, for example, we could put logic in the function. I'm actually in the door, we should go put to the door. The function that we have that opens the door, for example, this code here. Like so, we copy this, copy, and we go to our onRep, and we put that in here, like so. And then we go back to our code again on the graph, and we disconnect the multi, and we disconnect the call to the multi, like so. And then we run again. Now we're on the client, we're pressing E, server is getting a lot of notifiers as the door is opening. We press F here, we can see that we are thinking on the client that our angle is 0 for the door. But we keep moving here and we get in range, and you see that the door snaps open to the actual state, and it's fixing up the desync issue, making sure that we have the correct value. And it's also only doing it the one time we come in here and it noticed that we have the wrong value, basically. So it's very efficient in such ways. It doesn't require a whole lot of calls, and it's very event based, and it's very good. So what did we actually do now then? Well, when we are, let's go to the third person character. We're pressing E, and the E event here is triggering that the server, a server event, basically making sure that the server takes over the processing. The server in this case finds an actor and sends a message to use the function, or event rather, open door on this actor. On the door blueprint, we have this event now, which is being processed by the server, and only the server. It gets this custom event, it uses this timeline, it calculates an angle, and every time angle is changed, and this also means that if some other piece of code were to change this angle as well, then this RepNotify would happen even for that as well. So you have all the functionality at the same place, making sure you don't have to keep track of multiple places to change code also. But yeah, so we set the angle here to whatever we're calculating by the timeline. We're setting the value here with a notify, and we end up calling this on RepNotify, which then sets the rotation of the door to whatever angle is replicated. So whatever the current client or server thinks the angle is setting this value if they are relevant for this information. So if you're outside of this range, for example, if you're too far away, or you haven't logged into the server yet, or a bunch of other reasons, you are not deemed eligible for this information. But whenever you get within the culling distance, or fulfill these requirements that say that you should be eligible for this information, and your information is differing from this replicated variable, then the onRep function will call, and you will set the rotation on the door just like we saw when we did this example here by pressing E. And I can just run in and you can see that it snaps open. So that's how you solve the problem with clients missing the RPC call and still having the information about what a certain thing is in state-wise. So if you were to, I think that makes sense. I hope that's understandable. Of course, it is important that not only the variable is replicated like we spoke about earlier, but also that the actual blueprint itself is replicating, because if the blueprint isn't replicating, it doesn't matter your variables are replicating or not, because you can see this sort of as an overarching checkbox, basically, making sure that if you just deselect this replication, then nothing inside of it will work, but you need to have it both on the blueprint and on the different variables that you want to keep track of by replicating. I hope that made sense. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you did not like it, leave a dislike. Leave any suggestions or comments you have down below. Subscribe and share this video if you want to see more like it in the future. That is all for now. Keep on learning. Take care.